Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. I have a bad feeling about this one, ladies and gentlemen. While I don't know for sure, obviously we have to wait until launch and until we play the whole game to really gauge all it has to offer. It is giving off vibes that Anthem and Marvel's Avengers did, which is never good. This is a live service looter shooter, and I don't feel like, especially based on these recent previews, that it'll really live up to Rocksteady's legacy, especially where the Arkham trilogy is concerned. Now, this is a project whose optics has been troubled from the beginning. So, for example, here we have gameplay footage from 10 months ago. The likes to dislikes ratio says a lot. Same with this bit of marketing material right here. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, official behind the scenes that has much more dislikes than likes. And then more recently, they've been releasing essentially like a dev diary type of thing, or just dev commentary on what we can expect from this game. And here is, part one of that, Suicide Squad Insider 01 story and gameplay, more dislikes than likes. Here we have part two, which is Meet the Support Squad, and it's got more dislikes than likes. That's kind of been the trend for this game. But people are hoping that at the very least, once, journalists, content creators invited to preview the game, get their hands on it, it'll leave a much better impression. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. Here is Destin from IGN, who previewed the game and had this to say: I wanted to like Suicide Squad, but honestly had a hard time with it. I do think that's partially because of the structure of the preview event itself, though. Here's hoping the full game fares better. He added further context in a response where he said, I truly think that the game is going to be better at launch. The event felt a bit rushed, and there were tech issues for half of it. I'm looking forward to sitting down at home and taking my time with this one. Now, while the rushed nature of the preview event might have played a factor, the fact of the matter is that there's so much of the same criticisms, not just from IGN, but throughout multiple media outlets, that it makes me think that it's more to do with the game's just foundational structure of it being kind of, I think it's just going to be another generic looter shooter type of situation. While some aspects might be alleviated when you do play the full game, like the fact that you can engage with builds and see the full story and all of the cutscenes, which are the things that are most praised, the cinematography and the presentation, the performances, and the dialogue between all of the characters, and the scenario seen through cutscenes, all of that stuff's getting positive feedback. The core gameplay and mechanics, it doesn't feel like a lot of the people who previewed the game are really feeling it. So specifically, IGN said, we played multiple hours of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and we did not like it. And then going to the article itself, here's the headline, bluntly stating that they did not like it. They did compliment the story, or at least so far. It's hard to see how all of it will play out. They did highlight that you will be killing characters you know and love. It's called Kill the Justice League. It is in the title, though IGN is worried that Rocksteady won't commit to it and that they're going to find a way to undo everything somehow by the end. But when it comes to gameplay, it is stated here, there's a disconnect with game mechanics straight out of the likes of Destiny, Anthem, or Marvel's Avengers. The fun just wasn't there for me, at least not yet, according to Destin. Cutscenes have clearly been given a lot of love, but this is a live service game from Rocksteady, and it has a much less inspired combat system and an open world that's filled with tedious tasks. Go from point A to point B, kill waves of enemies, just the usual stuff. And along the way, you got teammates who just won't shut up with the quips, which was a big issue with me when it comes to Marvel's Avengers. Some dialogue between them is fine, but when there's just so much of it, it does get grating mid-gameplay. And even one of the major boss fights against one of the Justice League members, no less, the Flash, did not leave a positive impression. IGN said that the fight was more annoying than anything. No indication where the Flash is most of the time, and he's the Scarlet Speedster, so he's just constantly zipping around the map. Wish there was a bit of a he's down, get him moment. And while you might look at this and say, well, duh, he's the Flash, he is the Speedster, of course he's going to be kind of annoying to fight and zipping around the map. There's a way to design the mission structure, the encounter scenario, and the level in such a way that fighting such an entity feels fun. What IGN experienced was the scenario where you have such a just big stage for this combat scenario, and the Flash is kind of the small entity who's zipping around, and there's just so much happening on screen that it is... I can see why this fight, under this particular level design, in this particular stage, kind of looking like this, and it being structured like this, and designed like this, why it might be cause for annoyance. It's a fight that's more about whittling him down by constantly like playing a game of hide and seek. It feels like seeing this in action, it does seem like it bogs down to one of those like looter shooter encounters where he's just a big old bullet sponge, except this is just a target that just keeps moving around, and so you can't really spend time just really going at him. I think I kind of understand what this criticism is, and IGN is not the only one to have this criticism. GameSpot said something similar. I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, a lot of missions tend to favor the tried and true types from looter shooters, defend a point from waves of enemies that spawn. There is a potential saving grace of builds potentially being interesting to explore and make and customize, which we didn't get a chance to do. And then when it comes to the combat itself, while each of the 4 Suicide Squad members do play distinctly in that their mobility is different and they do have some unique powers, the core mechanics are similar. You're aiming and shooting a gun, just felt samey across the board, says IGN, though build possibilities could potentially offer a glimmer of hope to really distinguish them from one another. But the grand takeaway from IGN was that I left the preview event less optimistic than when I came in, which for a preview for a major AAA game from Rocksteady no less, I mean, damn, that's pretty brutal. And again, IGN is not the only one. Here we have Video Games Chronicle, who tweeted a few hours with Rocksteady Suicide Squad isn't enough to convince it's a worthy departure for the celebrated Arkham studio. Going to the article itself, it is highlighted that you would not know that this game is from the same studio that created the Arkham trilogy. It's just such a departure. And while the narrative, according to Video Games Chronicle, has a compelling hook and has likable performances from the cast and the characters, the game was criticized for not feeling as intuitive to control as it could, even though the 4 Suicide Squad members feel unique enough with their movesets and unique mobility options. Though again, when it comes to combat, you are mostly going to be pointing and shooting. And for Video Games Chronicle, there was a general sense of this identity mishmash for the characters you were playing. With Batman Arkham, for example, you really felt like you were playing Batman, the way the game played, all of your different tools and whatnot. Whereas in this game, when you control Harley, for example, you feel more like kind of a less compelling version of Spider-Man with the way you kind of swing around the city. And then the fact that everyone has third-person shooter combat when something like that would be more fitting for specifically Deadshot just kind of weakens the identity of each individual character, according to Video Games Chronicle. It was highlighted that coordination felt messy in this game. I found myself rushing from rooftop to rooftop, struggling to spot the next enemy spawn, only to find most of them have been mopped up by someone else by the time I got there. The verticality of the open world doesn't seem to be done in a super intuitive way, as this player frequently lost sight of where his other squad mates were, and when he'd go to their map markers, turns out to be like levels below. And then there were concerns surrounding just the fundamental gameplay of this game, which boils down to going from point A to point B, shooting a lot of nondescript purple aliens, then going to another point to shoot more purple guys. And that's still even the case for one of the boss encounters that wasn't a member of the Justice League. And then when the Flash was encountered, Video Games Chronicle said that it felt like the boss had a very tedious build-up, makes you appreciate why bosses in team-based shooters are typically larger than life, and why these encounters occur in enclosed arenas rather than the open world. And based on these final words, it's clear that the Video Games Chronicle player left somewhat disappointed, stating that after breaking new ground for the superhero genre with the Arkham series, it's sad to think that a decade later, Rocksteady is merely following others, following trends, instead of setting them. Next up, we got GameSpot, who said in a tweet that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is ambitious but conflicted. And in the article itself, they break down the fact that things always felt a little clunky, especially with, say, like Harley Quinn's navigation. Swinging into walls was frequent, or losing track of my next grapple point, though maybe it's just a matter of becoming acquainted to the gameplay mechanics. But the fact that even after, an extensive enough hands-on time, it just wasn't clicking immediately is maybe a bit of cause for concern. Though there are compliments paid to the way it feels to make different builds for these different characters, pushing those different elements of Harley's build made combat feel not only different from what I'd already tried, but highly effective in making disparate elements of combat and traversal feel important to your battle strategy. Character builds, my impression was that the systems allow for a lot of interesting customization that goes beyond the usual spreadsheet style min-maxing. It's not just about number go up, but fundamentally changing your gameplay style. So in that sense, playing Suicide Squad in its entirety might prove to be more interesting than what these previews are presenting. but the core fundamental gameplay mechanics have to be fun to carry you through the extensive game and the build making. So that's where I'm concerned based on these previews, especially when the activities that you partake in the open world metropolis have been near universally been criticized for being generic in terms of just the combat encounters that you do. Literally the same criticisms levied by IGN and Video Games Chronicle, same basic gist of battling waves of enemies while swinging back and forth between rooftops. It's just typical looter shooter types of missions that offer nothing interesting and are more of like a tedious grind. That's what make up the repeatable open world events, though Rocksteady said that in the story-driven missions, you'll get more sort of bespoke scenarios and encounters that will feel more fleshed out. But then we get to the boss fight against Flash and how so many seem kind of disappointed by it. The fight felt a bit clunky. Flash's quick movements around the battlefield, which is a pretty sizable battlefield too. A chunk of a defunct theme park made it hard to track the action. Tough to tell where a lot of his attacks were coming from or when and why you were taking damage. So a lot of the visual cues and audio cues were just not good enough for you to feel like you are ready to engage your skills to, dodge his attacks or counterattack or whatever it is. It felt like it was more about wearing the boss down and not the result of particular teamwork or strategy on our part. There was nothing in the way of interesting gameplay mechanics or cool boss elements that made the fight just feel more interesting or like you had to work together towards a common goal. Like, the best way I can describe it based on what I'm seeing is that it looks like a speedster mosquito you're trying to swat, except that mosquito is a bullet sponge, and so you have to swat him a lot before it goes down. Here we have another not so positive preview from Eurogamer, who tweeted, "Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League sees Rocksteady's trademark world building held back by trend chasing," which is in line with, say, what Video Games Chronicle said about how this game feels like it's just Rocksteady merely following others. Going to the article itself, Eurogamer also brings up the fact that coordination felt difficult to do. There's little sense of teamwork between all of the different squad members. Playing as a group doesn't always feel like playing together. It's just 4 players attempting to dominate the battlefield individually, which maybe kind of goes in line with what Suicide Squad the group is, but in terms of making for fun co-op gameplay, making for coordination that feels satisfying, it kind of falls flat, it seems. Now, Eurogamer did enjoy the somewhat scrappy combat, and they do think that the narrative so far seems to be on point, and that seems to be the main draw of the campaign. It's just like watching the story unfold and seeing all of the cutscenes and set pieces. But generally, Eurogamer got the sense that this is more trend chasing than a game that is in line with what the studio does best. Its Arkhamverse lineage and characterful storytelling are strong, but this might not be the superhero fantasy you're looking for. And even news outlets with more optimistic outlooks on the game, like Game Informer, who seem to have had more of a fun time with the game, stating in their concluding paragraph that "I have many questions, but I feel much more confident in Rocksteady's long-awaited follow-up to its critically acclaimed Arkham series." Even in more positive articles, there were a lot of the same complaints about how the missions have the sense of sameness to them, with Eurogamer specifying here that many of the ones I played in Chapter 1 and 3 boiled down to going to an area and defeating all the enemies or defending a location against hordes of aliens. The only thing that broke up the monotony was that boss battle against the Flash, which the majority of people who got their hands on this game didn't seem to fully enjoy, though Game Informer seemed to have found the fight to be exciting, and they're hoping that as the campaign goes on, there are more bespoke missions like this instead of the typical defeat all enemies on point A or defend point B. But yeah, after seeing all of these previews come out, plenty of pundits are weighing in on this, among them being John Linman from Digital Foundry, saying that it's an interesting situation. It's fairly uncommon to see negative previews, as publishers which offer an early peek at a game typically only do so with games they're confident are good to great. Feel bad for all of the folks that worked so long on this project. I don't even recall Anthem and Marvel's Avengers getting this kind of preview impression. Maybe enough time has passed where media outlets are kind of getting sick and tired of these kinds of games, especially when it's from Rocksteady and they set the bar so high with the Arkhamverse. Now, Destin tried to say that maybe it's more to do with the way the preview event was structured and the tech issues that they experienced on site. John Linman retorted by saying that, "I feel an hour should be more than enough time to determine whether the core mechanics are any fun. If the caveat is that it's games as a service, it needs more time, then that says to me that the core gameplay is not the focus." I do feel similarly, if you play an hour and you don't get that sense of this is fun to play, I have questions, but the first impression is I had fun with what I checked out, then that is not a good sign for the longevity of this game and whether it can get its hooks in you for the long term. Though again, you never know. Maybe if you play enough hours with it and really engage with the builds of each character, maybe really things do start opening up in a way that we won't anticipate, and this game will end up being better than what these previews are given off, which I hope is the case. Now, it should be noted that recently Rocksteady lifted the NDA on closed alpha participants who got to spend more time with the game, a couple days, I believe, and so we're starting to see impressions from them. And if you look at those, you will find positive comments. Plenty of people here, for example, saying that they enjoyed the experience. But at the same time, I do feel like there are some mixed responses as well. As far as like individual positive comments go, you'll find stuff like this, where somebody's saying, I liked it a lot, gave me a lot of Crackdown meets Sunset Overdrive vibes. You got people saying it was really good, especially apparently there's a Batman segment when you fight Batman. Apparently the way they handled that was really cool. So I do imagine that there are going to be cool moments in the game, especially those more bespoke missions where you fight the Justice League. And then there are more negative comments like this, where this individual just straight up said, I didn't enjoy it, unfortunately, didn't enjoy the combat or gameplay. I love Rocksteady, but this doesn't seem to be for this individual. So I feel like for every couple positive comments I see, I do also see some negative comments as well. And so, for example, if you look at Destin's tweet here, where he asked, okay, you guys got more time with the game because you got to participate in the alpha. What do you think? You got plenty of people saying, you know, the Crackdown comparison is pretty prominent, but then you got people saying, I didn't like it at all. Combat and traversal felt sloppy, unsatisfying, like a generic games as a service game and the open city missions. So while we are seeing more of a mix of feedback, there is negativity or rather criticisms alongside the more positive impressions. So it's still, even with the alpha participants giving their feedback who've had more time playing the game, it doesn't give me full confidence that this game will be for me, or that it was a matter of people needing more time with the game to get a more positive impression. Like, I feel like this is made for a specific crowd who may very well enjoy it, but it might not be the universally beloved Rocksteady project that people were hoping this would be after their achievements with the Arkham trilogy. And then beyond that, going viral is the fact that the UI and HUD of this game does look, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It looks kind of atrocious. It hurts the eyes a little bit. There's just so much going on. It's so busy with so many different colors and lack of cohesion that it doesn't really pave the road for something intuitive to look at, something that offers information in a way that's easy on the eyes. And so tweets like this saying Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League might have the worst HUD I've ever seen in recent memory are going viral, and people are putting out the Elden Ring meme where somebody was like, this is what Elden Ring would look like, what the HUD would look like if it was like a Ubisoft open world game. It feels like that was made into reality in this Suicide Squad game. And even seeing it in motion, it doesn't help matters. It's not just specific still frames, but just playing the game, it feels like it constantly looks like this. And there are plenty of screenshots going around from people pointing out just how not attractive this is. Even John Linman said this is frighteningly bad. And even I myself kind of compiled some of the screenshots that people have uploaded just saying Suicide Squad's UI, my eyes, they hurt. And this went viral as well. So this is a major part of the conversation. And I hope that there's honestly not much time left until the game comes out. The game comes out on February 2nd, 2024, if I'm correct. That is, less than a month away. And I don't think that's enough time to really fix any of the game's major issues. What the previews have told us about this game is probably pretty much what we're gonna get. If you like what the previews are saying so far, then you might end up enjoying the game. But otherwise, I feel like this is not one of those like we'll fix it later type of thing, unless it's like post-launch way down the line. The game that we're being told about in the previews is the game that we're going to end up playing, in which case I don't think Suicide Squad will resonate with me personally. I feel like it might not resonate with a lot of people, but I'll also certainly hold out full judgment until reviews come out and until I get my hands on the game myself and get to experience what this title has to offer. But it just doesn't seem like it's up my alley, and I feel like a lot of people will be disappointed that Rocksteady went this route. And I think that's in large part to do with the fact that Warner Brothers just has been pushing for more live service games and want all their stuff to be live service. Back in November of 2023, Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav straight up said during an earnings call that he wants to focus on transforming its biggest franchises into live service games to drive engagement and monetization of longer cycles, yada, yada, yada. Everything you don't want to hear out of an executive who has full control over beloved IPs and franchises in the gaming realm. People are already concerned about Monolith Productions' upcoming Wonder Woman game, which had job listings that seemed to suggest that the game will feature live service elements, but Warner Brothers came out and said that it's not being designed as a live service, but no doubt it will have a lot of microtransactions elements. Kind of like how Warner Brothers' release of Middle-earth: Shadow of War was not technically a live service game, but the microtransactions did absolutely corrupt the overall experience. And then you look at recent Warner Brothers releases like Mortal Kombat 1, and while it's a very solid fighting game, the aggressive monetization in this game is something that's being panned by fans across the world. And it just feels like this is just the trend that Warner Brothers wants to keep pursuing. And Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, with it chasing essentially the Destiny experience or the less successful Anthem and Marvel's Avengers experience, feels like a product of that kind of corporate pursuit. This doesn't really feel like what Rocksteady wanted to make. It feels like what the Suits wanted to make. And that might explain why so many of Rocksteady's old guard left the studio. And I don't know, it just... this is just not what I would have wanted out of the renowned studio. Hopefully, the game will be better than how the previews are presenting it to be so far, but it's hard to feel optimistic based on all of the footage that I've seen, and there's tons of it out there, and based on the fact that a lot of previews seem to confirm my fear surrounding this game. But time will tell. In the meantime, though, this is everything you need to know about what people are saying about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, what my take is on all of this. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, whether it's something you'll be checking out and are optimistic for, or whether you're kind of being cautious about approaching it like I am. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.